Today's video has been sponsored by Star Trek Online to celebrate their 16th anniversary and the release of their 35th season of free-to-play MMORPG content that covers the vast depth and breadth of Star Trek's universe. The recent update called Corruption has you team up with Nicole DeBurr as Ezri and Ezri to investigate a brand new original threat called the Chimera, who are going around infesting stuff, including the Borg, with horrible purple goop. Go stop them right now on PC and from March 10th on PlayStation and Xbox. This is occurring alongside the yearly anniversary events featuring free stuff like the amazing new M-Pursa Juggernaut, one of the unique Khitomer Alliance ships in the game that blends the design languages of its members together. This joins a whole host of other fantastic spacecraft in the game, many of which are so good they've been canonized in multiple TV shows. So go check out Star Trek Online for free today by clicking the links in the description and pinned comment below. Augmentations, implants, cybernetics, whatever you want to call them, they are everywhere in sci-fi. These technological replacements for body parts can be used as simple prosthetics or full-blown enhancements, introducing dramatic new capabilities to those who have them, like really fast typing and swords in your arms. But while this aspect of them is certainly exciting, they also have a dark side. These negatives of transhuman augmentation are the subject of today's Spacedock video. Cybernetics are an undoubtedly cool thing to include in fiction, but that coolness often makes us overlook the knock-on effects they cause upon those who have them, which are both fascinating and heartbreaking. We'll get onto the more dramatic and horrifying downsides later on, since we're starting out with the relatable everyday things. Like costs, because just getting an implant and having it installed is not going to be cheap, especially if you want a capable one. Not to mention ongoing costs associated with repairs and maintenance. Yes, it's true that regular unaugmented people also need maintenance, in a sense, but mechanical or robotic or other kinds of implants need additional specialized care. Moving joints need looking after, connection points kept secure, all those things that any complex device in heavy use needs. I'm sure this pops up now and then in fiction, but one example I want to highlight is in Star Wars Skeleton Crew with KB, where she has to get help with replacing a vital part because she skipped out on maintenance. Another everyday issue is powering the thing. Maybe it's something like in Deus Ex or Cyberpunk, where they seem to get power from the body via food, or just totally ignored as they tend to be in Star Wars. Which seems fine, it would kind of ruin the fun if Luke's hand ran out of batteries mid-fight, wouldn't it? And Darth Vader would be a teensy bit less intimidating if you caught him plugged into the wall while he's recharging, like how current robotic prosthetics work. Speaking of current prosthetics, they can often have issues with fit and comfort. How this translates to high-tech augmentations largely depends on how advanced they are, where on the body they go and how they connect. If they're worn, then you can think of them like shoes, where the contact point can get uncomfortable over time, or even lead to blisters and sores. An implant with a physical connection, like those joined directly to bone, may be able to avoid those issues, but then the attachment point itself may get worn down over time through use. If it's an implant joined to flesh, then scar tissue could develop, which leads us to the first major fictional downside of sci-fi augments: new forms of illness. Scar tissue specifically is a big issue in the more recent Deus Ex games, where the build-up of such tissue on the connections between nerves and the electronics of an augment eventually leads to a loss of control over said augment, as well as other minor side effects like death. This small problem can be staved off with a constant supply of special medicine, and naturally, access to this medicine becomes a way to control those who are augmented. A kind of similar condition exists in Ghost in the Shell, called cyberbrain sclerosis. In the setting, a cyberbrain is one integrated with electronics, which has a chance to lead to a hardening of the brain tissues. An eventual death is guaranteed since there's no cure, which is a bit of a problem in the setting since cyberbrains are so widespread. Luckily, there supposedly are treatments to slow the condition, with the story of the first season of Standalone Complex revolving around these treatments. This sort of issue applies even more strongly to biological implants, like those that Clarissa Mao has in The Expanse. Yes, they allow her to move extremely quickly for brief bursts, but they are poorly integrated with her body, causing not only aftersickness, but also long-term life-shortening ill effects. It's sort of like Tony Stark's arc reactor slowly poisoning him in Iron Man 2, except that there is also what's keeping him alive. Cyberpunk 2077 shows that augmentation could also have an adverse effect on mental health. There's a wide array of reasons for the cyberpsychos in that game having lost control and gone on killing sprees. Sometimes it's being placed in a bad situation, sometimes it's addiction, or just some other thing pushed them over the edge. In general, the idea of cyberpsychosis in the game seems to be applied with a very broad brush in order to keep people scared and constantly upgrading their own chrome to protect themselves. It's a bit more nuanced than the way the tabletop treats it, though that is interesting in its own right. There, it's tied to a humanity stat, where the more of a person's body they give up in exchange for machine parts, the less they relate to humans. So characters that are fully cyborged up, like Adam Smasher, are essentially totally divorced from everyone else, completely lacking empathy and reveling in violence. Crucially though, this effect does not apply to replacements for an involuntary loss of a body part. It's interesting to me how Saren in Mass Effect can be looked at in that light, since while he does get numerous upgrades from Sovereign, he is also being brainwashed by the effects of Reaper indoctrination, which is then made worse by the implants, which he gets more of. It's a bit of a horrible feedback loop where Saren is being pulled away from organic life so Sovereign can exert more control. Pretty nasty situation to be in really, much like the Collectors being able to be fully remote controlled thanks to their own cybernetics. And that there is another massive downside to high-tech augments. They can be hacked. Like all the various effects that quick hacks have in Cyberpunk 2077, things like creating false noises or causing the implants to overload, or even disabling them outright. This is all done wirelessly, and if that seems crazy to you to have Wi-Fi on your arm that lets someone else move it, Ghost in the Shell has local hacking done by tiny little machines called interceptors. These latch onto the connection between someone's cyberbrain and eyes, allowing for covert surveillance, or worse. While we're on blindness, what happens when support for implants ends? The blindness thing will make sense in a second, trust me here. Maybe the supplier goes out of business, they get bought out, or they just decided to cease supplying maintenance, updates and things like that. Anyone who had one of their products is now screwed, especially if it's something highly specialist that can't just be jailbroken or unofficially maintained. This is bad enough when the tech in our lives has this happen. Now imagine it's part of you. Imagine it was your limbs or senses. Sounds awful, right? And you know what? This has already happened in real life. That's right, back in 2020, some people using retinal implants to restore their sight suddenly had their vision ripped away from them without warning when the company that supplied the implants went bankrupt. This left over 350 people in the lurch, some with non-functional devices still attached to them, others without any option for ongoing official support. I can't think of a clever segue to the next downside, which is the degrading effect of society that cybernetics that improve human performance would cause. An obvious effect is increasing the gap between haves and have-nots, where those without enhancing implants are less attractive to employers. It could be manual labour where cybernetics increase strength and stamina, or white-collar work where they give a leg up in a social setting. This in turn has its own effects. One is pressuring people who cannot afford it to also get augmented, leading them into debt or a company essentially owning parts of them. Another is that having expensive implants makes you a target. There's always going to be someone willing to extract these devices from other people for selling on the black market, like the scavs and harvesters from Cyberpunk and Deus Ex respectively. The inverse of what they do is the idea of forcing cybernetics on people who don't want them, which of course is also present in Cyberpunk 2077. The best example of this is a little side quest involving a pair of monks kidnapped by members of the vicious Maelstrom gang, who are all heavily modified as they see it as a way of shedding useless flesh in exchange for superior technology. As part of this, they enjoy cruelly spreading their dubious gifts to those that go without. They're like a tamer version of Star Trek's Borg, who also forcefully implanted cybernetics onto those they brought into their hive mind, all in the pursuit of perfection. The psychological toll of these non-consensual body modifications has been shown a few times in Star Trek, both on someone raised with implants who barely knew anything else, and on those who knew life outside of the collective. The ultimate expression of this sort of thing is Warhammer 40k's Servitors and Half-Life 2's Stalkers. These are both people stripped of almost everything that made them human to turn them into a semi-organic machine for performing menial tasks. The Servitors are often made from purpose-grown clones, but not always. And the stalkers are made from anyone the Combine wants to get rid of. What a terrible fate. To have this level of modification forced upon you, or really any amount of it if you don't want it to happen. So that's a few of the bad things to consider when including cybernetics in a setting. It's not all cool robot limbs with swords hidden inside, there's a whole bunch of grim side effects to consider as well. Collectively, you've all seen far more media featuring cyborgs than I have, so let me know in the comments below what downsides you've seen out there. You can support Spacedock by joining our Patreon, where you can get our frigate, fighter and carrier design reference books, as well as 1 week early access to upcoming videos. Thanks to our supporters, and thank you for watching.